Oh shit.
Death Stranding is a video game about walking. A lot of walking. Some people might find that incredibly boring. Some people will find it to be a complete waste of time. Is it though? It's admittedly not hard to see why anyone would think that. Video games are escapist media. We play games in part because we want to experience things, stories, that aren't possible or can't be done with the same level of simplicity in our everyday lives. Whether it's going to space to fight for the survival of planet Earth, or putting on the shoes of your favorite sports person to win the most important match of the season. Video games aren't supposed to be the cause of boredom. They are the remedy for boredom. But Death Stranding doesn't seem to care about what other games are doing. It doesn't care about your personal power fantasies. Unless your power fantasy is to be a post-apocalyptic postman who spends most of their time walking and contemplating. How and where you decide to walk in Death Stranding will determine how long your trek will take, how much you can carry, and how many or few mistakes you're allowed to make without damaging or losing your cargo. There are enemies to fight and or avoid, like the scavengers and the creepy ghost people who come out during rainfalls, but the terrain is your true enemy. Slippery rocks, fast currents, steep cliffs, snowy mountaintops, the terrain and the challenges of adapting to it is the one thing you can't avoid. Not to begin with, anyway. The end goal of Death Stranding is to physically and metaphysically rebuild the United States of America, to make roads where vehicles can once again drive, and even create alternative means of transportation like futuristic zip lines. From a gameplay perspective, you do all of this so you barely have to walk anywhere anymore. But to accomplish that, you have to put in a lot of time. And that struggle is a deliberate part of the experience, to make it all feel worthwhile when America is, once again, united. One of the first questions that came to my mind while playing Death Stranding for the first time was why I chose to play this game at all when I could just put on some weather-resistant clothes and take a really long walk into the wilderness in real life instead. The simple answer was that I didn't want to. I just wanted to play a video game. The long answer is that Death Stranding isn't just about walking long distances, but how you do it. You can absolutely try to recreate the outdoor experience of playing Death Stranding in real life and be perfectly happy with that. But one shouldn't underestimate the value of being able to have that kind of experience in the comfort of your own home. I love taking longer walks, whether it's to the university I'm attending or more aimless walks through woods and open fields. But I'm slowly but steadily getting older. I can't walk for hours on end anymore. Regardless of what shoes I'm wearing, my feet don't like it very much when I walk much further than I actually have to. And it's a lot harder to appreciate the architectural or natural beauty of your surroundings when you can't stop thinking about how many steps you have to take before you can finally sit down and rest. Then there are people who, because of limited mobility, simply can't walk through rough terrain at all. And if you're watching this in the year 2020, there is also a global pandemic going on, which has seriously limited a lot of people's access to the great outdoors. You often want what you can't have. And right now, Death Stranding is offering something that real life can't give. What makes long walks fun, both in real life and in Death Stranding, isn't just that you can stop for a second and actually take a look at the pretty sights you usually take for granted. You also get to be truly alone with your own thoughts. You could of course say that about any kind of escapist media, but Death Stranding forces you to be introspective by not offering too many distractions. In that sense, Death Stranding is less escapist media than it is contemplative media. My conclusion was that no, Death Stranding is not a waste of time. At least not for me. For a while I thought I was done thinking about that, but then something happened during the later half of 2020 that got some attention on social media. Former Fear Factor host Joe Rogan said on his podcast that video games, in general, are a waste of time. I don't particularly care about what Joe Rogan has to say about, well, anything. But on this rare occasion, he actually got me thinking. Are video games a waste of time? My gut reaction was to say no. I could just as easily claim that Joe Rogan's podcast is a waste of time. But then I got less interested in trying to combat the claim, and more interested in finding out why he said it in the first place. He's not the first person to think that there are more valuable things to do than play video games, and he will most definitely not be the last. So I watched an excerpt from the podcast where Rogan interviews business owner Joe DeCina, and the argument basically boils down to one thing. Playing video games isn't productive. We all know that it can be, of course. Even Rogan himself admits that people are making money off of playing video games. However, he claims that popularity of specific games is fleeting, and if you're really good at just one game, you might be financially screwed later on. He compares this to training martial arts.
You could learn jiu-jitsu. You get obsessed by jiu-jitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite jiu-jitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well. Right. You're thinking like, I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your jiu-jitsu school, and your jiu-jitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and like, that's the future. This way you're doing something exciting and fun, and you don't. Or you could just be playing fucking video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the fuck game is, next Xbox game to come out, and you're gonna waste your time.
There is some obvious irony here. I mean, you could describe the exact same kind of success story from the perspective of an esports athlete, while correctly claiming that jiu-jitsu generally isn't a very useful skill to have in your everyday life. Also, not everyone who practices jiu-jitsu, or any martial art for that matter, will go on to make money from it. Otherwise, you'd probably see martial arts schools with the same frequency as Starbucks. But I'm not here to dunk on Joe Rogan, not really. I actually want to learn something from this line of thinking. So I went even deeper and asked myself, what even is a waste of time? Like, we use that phrase so casually, but I'm not entirely sure what it means. The way I've been looking at it for most of my life can be put into two categories: short and long term. Short term would be something like, why are you playing video games when there's an exam tomorrow? While long term waste of time would be something like, why haven't you given us grandkids, you ungrateful little shit? But there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there? And it stems from that kind of take Joe Rogan has about video games. That our time is primarily meant to be used for productivity. Or more importantly, to generate monetary profit. Profit for yourself, profit for your employers. There's an old proverb that says that idle hands are the devil's workshop. If you're not occupied with chores and labor, you're more likely to cause mischief. Wasting time isn't just a waste, it's evil. Despite coming from a time when this was perhaps a bit more applicable, when people didn't have automated luxuries and were forced to do and make a lot of things by themselves to get by, this view on time wasting has persisted, even to this day. But even back in 1935, British polymath Bertrand Russell questioned this very proverb, or a variation of it, in his essay, In Praise of Idleness. Quote, "The fact is that moving matter about, while a certain amount of it is necessary to our existence, is emphatically not one of the ends of human life. If it were, we should have to consider every navvy superior to Shakespeare. We have been misled in this matter by two causes. One is the necessity of keeping the poor contented, which has led the rich for thousands of years to preach the dignity of labor, while taking care themselves to remain undignified in this respect. The other is the new pleasure of mechanism, which makes us delight in the astonishingly clever changes that we can produce on the Earth's surface. Neither of these motives make a great appeal to the actual worker. If you ask him what he thinks the best part of his life, he is not likely to say, I enjoy manual work because it makes me feel that I'm fulfilling man's noblest task, and because I like to think how much man can transform his planet. It is true that my body demands periods of rest, which I have to fill in as best as I may, but I'm never so happy as when the morning comes and I can return to the toil from which my contentment springs. I've never heard working men say this sort of thing. They consider work, as it should be considered, as a necessary means to a livelihood, and it is from their leisure hours that they derive whatever happiness they may enjoy." End quote. Russell did not predict the rise of what has been called workism during the 21st century, though. This refers to people who, because of the lack of personal time, try to find purpose and happiness through work rather than leisure, who build their personal identities around careers rather than hobbies and interests. In a way, that's what I've been doing with this YouTube channel. I turned my hobby of playing and talking about video games into a small part-time job because just doing it for fun didn't feel like it was enough anymore. I couldn't afford it to just be a hobby because it was starting to feel like I was maybe wasting time. Despite me not wanting to think or care about it, there was, and still is, a small nagging parasite who has made its home in the back of my mind, telling me that the real goal is not about sharing ideas or having fun, but about growth. Growth of audience, growth of income. This brings to mind another quote from Russell. "The modern man thinks that everything ought to be done for the sake of something else, and never for its own sake. Serious-minded persons, for example, are continually condemning the habit of going to the cinema, but all the work that goes to producing a cinema is respectable, because it is work, and because it brings a money profit. The notion that the desirable activities are those that bring a profit has made everything topsy-turvy. The butcher who provides you with meat, and the baker who provides you with bread, are praiseworthy because they are making money. But when you enjoy the food they have provided, you are merely frivolous, unless you eat only to get strength for work. Broadly speaking, it's held that getting money is good and spending money is bad. Seeing that they are two sides of one transaction, this is absurd. One might as well maintain that keys are good but keyholes are bad. The individual in our society works for profit, but the social purpose of his work lies in the consumption of what he produces. It is this divorce between the individual and the social purpose of production that makes it so difficult for men to think clearly in a world in which profit-making is the incentive to industry. We think too much of production and too little of consumption. One result is that we attach too little importance to enjoyment and simple happiness, and that we do not judge production by the pleasure that it gives to the consumer." End quote. Russell's proposed solution to this problem was simple: 4-hour workdays, which he describes as something almost magical in this final quote. "Above all, there will be happiness and joy of life, instead of frayed nerves, weariness, and dyspepsia. The work exacted will be enough to make leisure delightful, but not enough to produce exhaustion. Since men will not be tired in their spare time, they will not demand only such amusements that are passive and vapid. At least 1% will probably devote the time not spent in professional work to pursuits of some public importance, and since they will not depend upon these pursuits for their livelihood, their originality will be unhampered, and there will be no need to conform to the standards set by elderly pundits. But it's not only in these exceptional cases that the advantages of leisure will appear. Ordinary men and women, having the opportunity of a happy life, will become more kindly and less persecuting and less inclined to view others with suspicion. The taste of war will die out. Partly for this reason, and partly because it will involve long and severe work for all. Good nature is, of all moral qualities, the one the world needs most, and good nature is the result of ease and security, not of a life of arduous struggle. Modern methods of production has given us the possibility of ease and security for all. We have chosen instead to have overwork for some and starvation for others. Hitherto, we have continued to be as energetic as we were before there were machines. In this, we have been foolish, but there is no reason to go on being foolish forever.
The last part is heartbreaking when you remind yourself that Russell wrote this 85 years ago, and things have not exactly changed for the better. We are working less, sure, but there is, as Russell puts it, still overwork for some and starvation for others. We're living in an age where one guy is about to become the world's first trillionaire, while others have to take 2 or even 3 jobs to survive, if they can get a job at all. And we are still talking about what constitutes wasted time. In an ideal world, neither I or anyone else would have to feel guilty about using our free time to indulge in things like spending a whole day looking at cute animals on YouTube. But it's not just a lack of time that's standing in the way. There's also money. Just because you have more time to do the things you love doesn't mean you have the economic stability to pay for a $70 video game. And even if you do, not only might it feel like it was a waste of time if you didn't enjoy your new game, but a waste of money as well. And wasting money can be a lot more dangerous than wasting time. So, it's all about capitalism? Yes, it's about capitalism! It's fucking always about capitalism! God damn it! I know that this point has been made over and over again. But when things don't change, or don't change enough, the point remains. And that begs the question, if things are so bad, why are we still using this capitalist system? Well, the problem isn't that the system isn't working. The problem is that it's working exactly as intended. It's maliciously designed on a fundamental level to benefit some more than others. Perhaps we really are doomed to be foolish forever. To repeat the same old line of reasoning about productivity that Joe Rogan has, rather than try to make Bertrand Russell's idyllic vision of the future a reality. Death Stranding is a video game about walking. A lot of walking. Some people might find that incredibly boring. Some people will find it to be a complete waste of time. Is it though? I realize that I can't answer that. The only thing I know for certain is that you will never find out unless you try it for yourself and see where the paths take you. Yeah, there might be times while playing where you feel like time could have been better spent on something else. But maybe it's better to waste some time than not being able to waste any time at all.